Right, so we're going to start with Ansible today. This is the last experiment in the list of experiments that we have. Introduction to DevOps, Docker was already covered. Git is a self-study experiment because you all must have used Git uh, somewhere or the other in the entire 4 years, of course. And then Jenkins is something that you can explore. Ansible and Puppet I'll be teaching you. So Ansible is what we'll be covering today. All right, so let's start with Ansible. Ansible is basically a configuration management tool and a deployment and orchestration tool. So when I say configuration management tool or deployment and orchestration tool, it basically means something to do with the server machine, right? So when we talk about DevOps, as I already introduced you to what DevOps is, it is basically managing your infrastructure, IT infrastructure, right? And making or ensuring that the teams working in the IT infrastructure can integrate or collaborate on a common project, right? So we have heard the terms devs and we have heard the term ops. So devs is the one who does all the development part, and ops is the team that does all the deployment portion of the entire project. So we need tools that helps us manage both the process with an ease, right? That is, we already are aware of tools that helps us ensure that the deployment process is sorry, the development process is carried out smoothly. So we know the tools like GitHub. We know the tools like Jenkins. There's a tool called Jenkins that helps you do easy uh, development of your product. But there are tools that are required to also help you deploy those piece of codes onto the IT infrastructure that we have to manage in the backend, right? So when we talk about IT infrastructure, it is majorly talking about the server machines where we host our applications, right? So what are server machines? Can someone tell me what comes to your mind when you hear the term server? Don't write on the chat box. Turn on your mics and speak. So what comes to your mind when you hear the term server?
A machine that is probably storing all the data and where the processing takes place.
That happens on your desktop machine as well, right?
Yeah, large scale, like for an application that like the client app on the client's machine, it should not be running, right? For like any general software system.
Okay. Anyone else would like to give a try? What comes to your mind when you hear the term server? No one? Okay, so the guy who answered was near to the answer. So server basically is a machine that does a lot of computation, and not just does the computation for itself, but it does computation as part of providing service to the client machines. So when it is a web server, it does computations in order to provide you HTML pages or web pages or web results. And when it is a DNS server, it provides you name to IP mapping. If it's a DHCP server, it provides you IP address. If it's an FTP server, it provides you data that is stored on the FTP server. So there are different reasons why a server is created or a server is configured, right? So for an administrator, the task that he performs is configuration. That is to configure a server to to fulfill a certain action or fulfill a certain requirement, right? So for me to create a web server, I'll have to configure that piece of machine that I have been given to configure with certain software stacks on it, right? So for example, if the developers are using LAMP stack, so I'll have to go for with LAMP stack, right? Apache MySQL and PHP MyAdmin. If the developers are using mean stack, then I'll have to go for MongoDB, Express, Angular, right? So depends upon what is the requirement of the developer. Accordingly, the ops team has to configure the server and keep it ready for deployment, right? So imagine the scenario where you have for one machine, it is fine. So if someone asks me to configure LAMP stack or a mean stack on a single machine, it's easy. But usually in a server environment, usually with corporates or in IT industry, there is not just one server that you need to configure. There are farms of server that you have to configure. So imagine if you have to do the same configuration, repeat the same configuration identically on all the machine. then it will be a very hectic task for the administrator. So which is why DevOps under its umbrella has introduced tools which also helps not just the developers but also the operations team. That is, with the help of this software techniques, we can help the operations team to configure those servers at ease, deploy software stack or deploy projects on those servers at ease, and also orchestrate. What orchestration is exactly, I will tell in the further slides. Then configuration management, deployment, and orchestration. These are the three things that can be easily done using Ansible as a tool, and which aids the operators or the operations team in order to configure the server machines to make it ready for deployment. Right? What Ansible is, it's a push based configuration management tool. What exactly push based is, I'll also tell you in the later slide. So just remember, it's a push based configuration management tool. It helps you automate your entire IT infrastructure by providing large productivity gains. Right? So automating IT infrastructure, until DevOps came into existence, IT infrastructure was never automated. IT infrastructure was manually set up by the administrators. So there used to be administrators who used to go and set up the IT infrastructure. For every server that they had to configure, they had to sit on the terminal and they had to configure it manually, right? And it used to take a lot of time was involved, which used to increase the software development life cycle. And because SDLC does not incorporates the development aspect, also incorporates the deployment aspect. So it used to increase the lead times for the projects to get deployed on the production environment. But with the help of automation, the IT infrastructure was set up more easily, more rapidly, and which shrink that lead time into smaller times, and made it very easier for the entire team behind the project to bring it to the live production environment. Right, so this is the entire diagram which summarizes what Ansible as a tool is. So Ansible as a tool, it's an automation tool that helps you perform configuration management and helps you deploy application on the servers. It helps you provision and orchestrate IT infrastructure. So this is related to cloud. That is, Ansible also has cloud support where you can easily spin up virtual machine instances and deploy the application on the VMs. And automation, of course, it helps you automate the entire IT infrastructure rather than writing manual piece of code, or rather than manually sitting at each terminal and configuring those servers. uh, you can simply write a script and run that script in order to automate the entire IT infrastructure. And also it's a push based mechanism because there is another tool that we will be studying in the next practical, which is Puppet. So these are the two primary tools that are used for configuration management in IT industry. Both have their own approaches. Ansible uses push-based approach, that is, whatever changes I wish to make on the client machines or my IT infrastructure, I push it from the server machine, and it's basically you push the changes that you want to make into the clients. So the clients are waiting and they're waiting for your orders. And once you push the orders or tasks to the client machine, they start executing it. Whereas in pull-based approach, which is the Puppet tool, which uses pull-based approach. There, the client machines that needs to be configured, they pull artifacts from the server and they read from the server that what is the task allocated to them, and they start executing it. So that's the difference between push-based and pull-based. In push-based, the administrator from a single machine can push changes into other client machines, whereas in pull-based, you're not pushing anything. It's the client machines who are constantly waiting for any task that comes for them, and they will pull it from the server machine. So basically, Ansible follows the push based approach. So what are the features of Ansible? Firstly, so it is very simple to install and set up and very easy to learn. Second is its capabilities to model complex IT workflows and orchestrate your entire IT infrastructure. So doesn't matter how complex your IT infrastructure is, doesn't matter what complex software stacks you want to install on the IT infrastructure, all those things can be easily orchestrated and automated using Ansible. Again, it is agentless, that is, no need of any agent or client software to manage the nodes. So when you talk about those servers, let me check if I have a pen to draw. Okay, so usually what happens is you have these servers and you have multiple client nodes that you need to configure. So you don't need to install a special software on all the client nodes that you want to configure. You can simply just configure a server and push all the data into the client nodes. So there is no requirement to go and sit on every client machine and configure agents on the client machine to receive data from the server. So it is agentless. No need to pre-configure your all the IT infrastructure with the Ansible agents. Not required. It's agentless. Next is it's efficient because extensible with modules written in any programming language. So there are different modules that are available within Ansible that you can write your own module, or you can use pre-built modules in order to make your work easy. So we'll see what modules are when we do the hands-on. So this is how the Ansible architecture looks. The first thing to know about Ansible architecture is the inventory part of the Ansible architecture. So what inventories store is, Ansible inventories are the list of host nodes along with their IP addresses, servers, databases, etc., which need to be managed. Ansible then take action via transport SSH for Unix, Linux, or networking devices, and WinRM for the Windows system. So inventories in Ansible architecture or automation engine keeps track of all the host machines that it needs to manage. So Ansible, when installed on a server machine, it will have an inventory file. Within the inventory file, the administrator has to mention all the host machines that it wants to configure. So list of all the IP addresses of all the machines that we need to configure or we need to update the configuration information into has to be mentioned inside the inventory. So it can be a database server, can be any web server, it can be FTP, DNS, DHCP, whichever server you want to configure, uska IP address or the details about that server has to be mentioned within the inventory file. And what Ansible does is it makes use of SSH protocol. So like I said, it uses push based configuration. So how will it push data into the host? Using SSH. So every time you want to set up a configuration on a host machine, the Ansible server SSHs into the host machine, remotely takes control of the host machine, and then pushes all the commands onto the host machine to set up that host machine as per the requirement or as per the configuration mentioned, right? So that is about inventories. Next is the set of APIs that are available. So with the help of APIs, what Ansible architecture does is it helps you use cloud services, public or private. So like I mentioned in the previous case also, when you talk about provisioning and orchestration, Ansible helps you spin up virtual machines on Amazon Cloud or GCP or Microsoft Azure. But then you need APIs to contact those third-party cloud service providers. So Ansible has set of APIs through which you can contact them and you can generate or you can spin up instances on their platforms, right? Next is modules. So Ansible has a lot of inbuilt modules, right, and which we can use to execute statements or execute commands or perform certain actions on the host machine. So you can use different modules that are available. Let's say, for example, I want a module to install software. I want a module to copy a file from one machine to another. I want a module to remove a particular software or edit a particular file. So every action that you want to perform on the host machine has a module associated to it, and you have to simply use those modules in order to perform those operations on the host machine. We'll see that more in detail in the practicals. And then you have, like for example, if you want to configure a database on the host machine, so you have a separate module defined to how to configure databases on the host machine. If you want to work with cloud formations, then you have a separate module that will help you create cloud infrastructure, right? And then finally, you have plugins. What are plugins? These are different third-party software that you can use along with Ansible engine in order to gain more advantage, right? So you can use action plugins. So probably at the end of a module, if you want to trigger an action, so if the module executed and now you want to trigger an action based on the successful completion of a module task, then you can use the action plugin to define what should be performed next after the module is completed. Or you can use cache plugin to uh, this plugin basically helps you store all the artifacts of all the host machines. For example, let's say I have three host machines: host 1, host 2, and host 3, right? And host 1 has, let's say, Apache installed in it. Host 2 and 3 does not has Apache installed in it. So it is the cache plugin that keeps me informed that what are the current standing or state information of each host. So host 1 has Apache, host 2 and 3 does not have Apache. So if I want to configure Apache on all the three machines, it will become easier for my Ansible engine to understand that host 1 is already configured with Apache, and it will not push that command into host 1, but it will push that command into host 2 and host 3 where Apache is uninstalled. So these plugins help you, ease in your task, ease in the Ansible's task. These are extra features that you can use to avoid any extra tasks that we do if we don't have these plugins configured, right? So this was all about Ansible architecture. Now the most important part of Ansible is its playbook. So when we say we push something into the host machine, it is basically we want to execute a playbook, right? So in Ansible, the administrator will write a playbook. Playbook will basically describe what needs to be done on the host machines, right? So a playbook are like instruction manuals for the task. So anytime I want to set up or configure my server for a certain task, let's say I want to configure my server to have a Nginx web server, right? So what I can do is I can write a playbook, and the playbook will have all the tasks that needs to be carried out on the host machine where I want to configure my Nginx server, right? So for example, this is a task, and this is the syntax is usually YAML. So you use YAML notations to write this playbook, right? So they are simple files written in YAML, which stands for YAML Int Markup Language, a human-readable data serialization language. Playbooks are really at the heart of what makes Ansible so popular because they describe the task to be done easily and without the need for the user to know or remember any special syntax. Because as you can see over here, if you go on to read these lines, it will become very easy for you to understand what exactly is happening. For example, hyphen name says the name of the task. Host over here mentions that you have to specify the IP address where you want to run this task, and become true is basically it tells that you have to run this task as a root user. Then what are the tasks? So task colon is indicating that you are starting all your tasks over here, and then you're naming your task. So first task is to set up a repository, right? So you're using yum module to set up an EPL release repository. You're ensuring that the repository is present. The next task is to install Nginx. So you're using yum module. Again, what is yum? Yum is a online installer for Red Hat based operating system. For Debian operating system like Ubuntu, we have APT, right? So we are using yum module, and we are trying to ensure that Nginx service is present, right? If we run this playbook, and if the playbook says the state has to be present, and if the Ansible engine finds out that on the host this state is absent, so it will install this plugin for us. Next is insert index page. So we're using a template where we are ensuring that we copy the index.html from the host machine into our client machine where we want to configure the server. So you're specifying the source of the file, index.html file, and the destination where it is to be placed on the Nginx server. And then finally, the next task is to start Nginx. So to start Nginx, you are using the service module, because to start any service on Linux platform, you use the service command, right? Service name and start or stop or restart. So here we are using the service module name, and we are saying that the name of the service is Nginx and the state of it should be started. So the moment you run this playbook on any host, these steps will be carried out. And first, it will ensure that the repository is present. Second, it will ensure that the Nginx service is present. If not, it will install it. Third, it will copy the index.html at a location where the index.html files are placed in the web server. And finally, after all this operation, it will ensure that the Nginx server is started. Right. So this is how you write Ansible playbook to configure a Nginx web server. Similarly, you can write different playbooks for different sort of configurations. Right. I hope this is understood to you. This thing. Just give me a yes or a no if you understood this.
Yes, sir.
Right. So not only can they declare configuration, but they can orchestrate the steps of any manually ordered task and can execute tasks at the same time or at different times. So another advantage of writing playbook is you can orchestrate everything. You can specify step by step that what needs to be done. So these will be followed in a certain sequence only. They will not be followed out of sequence. So if you want to execute something, or if you want installation of software in a certain fashion, that is only after you install web server, you want PHP, you want MySQL, or you want PHP MyAdmin. So you can specify the order in which, or you can orchestrate the order in which you want the applications or the softwares to be installed, packages to be installed on your system, right? Next is each playbook is composed of one or multiple plays, and the goal of a play is to map a group of hosts to well-defined roles represented by the task. So, right, you define that what task needs to be executed on which group of hosts. So you specify the host over here. This can be a single host, or it can be group of machines that you want to run this task on. So remember, it's not that the playbook will run only on one machine on one IP address. You can instead of specifying an IP address over here, you can specify a group name, and then within the inventory file, like I mentioned in the architecture, which stores all the list of all the host machines that you want to configure, you have to specify all the list of IP addresses there. So if you specify a group name over here, this task, all these tasks, all these plays will be executed on all the hosts. So imagine with this one playbook, you can configure n number of machines and install Nginx along with the default web page on several machines at the same time. And so that is the power that Ansible brings. So example of a playbook. How do you write a playbook since you use YAML notation? So it starts with three hyphens, and then in order to specify which nodes the playbook to run on, these names are declared in the inventory file. So to specify the host you want to run it on, so you have to use the hyphen host keyword, right? And then you specify the name of the group that you want to run this playbook on. So now this web server thing, where does it comes from? This comes from the inventory file, where we mentioned that there's a group called web servers, and under web servers you have to specify all the IP address of the web servers that you want to configure, right? So rather than specifying all the IP addresses over here, you simply specify the group name, and the Ansible engine will automatically read from the inventory file that who all belong to these web servers, right? Next is the task. So you start writing the task. Every task has to be given a name, right? So you can give any name you want, but then you have to specify the modules that you want to use to perform the task. So now here, as you can see, we are using apt. Apt is basically used for Ubuntu machines, right? apt is an installer for Ubuntu machine. So here I'm telling the Apache playbook that apt module should be invoked, and the service name is Apache 2, and you have to ensure that the updated version of Apache 2 is present on state equals to latest, means that the latest version of Apache 2 has to be present on this machine. So if it is not present, if the state is not latest or state is absent, anything other than latest, it will install, the app module will install Apache 2 on that particular machine, right? Then you have the notify option. Notify option, what it does is it triggers the handler part on successful execution of a app module. So once you configure, once this module runs successfully, you can use the notify option to call a handler. So you can also define a handler in a playbook. What handlers does is, handlers are, these are special tasks that will run at the end of a play, and these will only be executed if they are invoked by a notify option, right? So a task is written, this is a play, right? If the play executed successfully or not will be notified by the notify uh, this thing handler, and notify handler will tell the handler to execute it, right? So the handler is what name restart Apache 2, and what we are trying to tell the handler is use the service module in order to start this Apache, restart this Apache service. So you have to just understand the naming conventions over here. Service is the module name, colon, you have to specify in terms of name and state what do you want to do with the service. So name of the service is Apache 2, state equals to restarted, means you want to restart it. If I would have written stop over here, it would have stopped Apache 2 on that machine, right? So you can specify with the help of name and state that what needs to be done with that particular service on the system. So this was an example of a playbook. Coming to Ansible usage, before taking you to this theory, I will just start with the hands-on, and then we'll come to the advantage and other part of it. So Ansible hands-on. The setup that I have to configure Ansible is, what we'll be doing is we'll be configuring two AWS EC2 instances. So this is my AWS EC2 dashboard. Here I'll be configuring two Linux environments, Ubuntu environments. So I'm using Ubuntu 18. I'm using this free tier eligible environment, 64-bit. I'm selecting it. Right, so I'm selecting the T2 free tier option. Click on next. Number of instances that I want to launch is two, because I want one as an Ansible server and one as a host, which I will configure through that Ansible server. Right? So I want two instances to be launched. We'll leave the other options as default. Don't touch them. Click on add storage. We'll leave the size default size. Click on add tags. Click on configure security group. Security group configuration is very important here. You have to ensure that SSH is enabled on both the instances. Another rule we'll add is, since I will be deploying a web application, I want also port 80 to be enabled on from anywhere. Anyone can access port 80 and SSH. Right. So these two options you have to enable in within the security group. I'll click on review and launch. It says select an existing key pair to connect to your instances, or you can create a new one. Right. So if you are new to this, you have to click on create a new key pair. It will ask you to give it a name, and you can download that and use it. For me, I already have a key pair available, so I'm using that one. So I acknowledge that I have access to this key pair. Key pair is very important when it comes to AWS, because if you lose this key, you won't be able to connect to your instances. So it is very important that you have access of this key. So launch instance. Right. So my two instances are running now. Right. I'll quickly name them. So the name of my first instance is Ansible server. Name of the second is Ansible host. Right. So these are the two machines. The server is the instance where I will configure the Ansible server, all the inventories and playbook, everything. And host is the machine that I will run the playbook on, so that at the end I have a full stack application configured on my host machine through the Ansible playbook. Right. So if you want to see the information about your instances, you can click on the instance and you can see the information available of your instances, that this is the public IP address for my instance, this is a private IP address, this is a public DNS. Right. All the other informations are mentioned over here. For now, what I'll do is, and again, as you can see over here, the key pair name to connect to this instance is bcom. So I should have this key already with me to connect to this, otherwise I won't be able to SSH into my instance over here. Right. And similarly for other one, same thing, there's a public IP allocated to it, there's a private IP allocated to it, it's open DNS address, and the key pair is important, so same key pair I'm using to connect to both the machines. Right. So I will connect to my AWS instances from an Ubuntu machine. So as part of practice, I was already doing it, so I have configured these. I'll delete them. So this is a tool, Ramina remote desktop client, which gives you an interface from where you can connect to your AWS instances. So I'll click on plus sign over here. I hope this is visible. The Ubuntu screen is visible to you all.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is, first I'm trying to connect to my Ansible server machine. So I'll give it a name called Ansible-server. And then which protocol am I using to connect to it? It's SSH. So I'll use SSH over here. Right. And then here under server, I'll have to provide the IP address of my Ansible server. So what is the IP address of my Ansible server? I'll click over here, and this is the public IP, right, for my Ansible server. The public IP is 18.191.103.202. So I'll use that over here. Username is, since it's a Ubuntu VM, so by default the username is Ubuntu. I don't have any password to it. The authentication type is not password, it is a public key, right? The key that I have uh, used for the key pair thing. So I'll have to choose the key pair. I'll have to choose the public key. So I already have it on my machine. So you should be in possession of this particular key. If you don't have it while you create it, you can create a new key pair and you can download it. So there's a PEM file that gets downloaded, right? So you'll have to use the same PEM file. So this is the setup that I've done for to remotely connect to my AWS instance, and I've given it a name. I've used SSH to connect to it. I've specified the parameters like IP address, the username through which I want to connect, and the public key pair file through which I will authenticate myself on the AWS platform. Save and connect. Right. So the moment I connected, now this is, see, I've got the shell access of my AWS instance. Currently, I'm in this instance whose private IP address is 172.30.136.247. As you can see over here in the bottom, it is 172.30.136.247, right? So currently, I'm in the shell of my AWS instance running the Ansible server, right? Now, what I'll do is I want to create another, I want to connect to my client as well, right? So simply click on add. This time it is Ansible client. So Ansible hyphen client. Again, the protocol is SSH. Now you have to specify the client IP address. So click on the client machine, get its details. So this is the public IP address of the client machine. I need to just copy it over here. So 18.38. Username again is Ubuntu for Ubuntu instances. Authentication type is public key, and the key is the same bcomp. Right, save and connect. Right, so I've managed to connect to both my AWS instances. One is my server, Ansible server, whose public private IP address is 172.30.136.247, and my Ansible client, whose IP address is 172.30.145.210. These both are private IP addresses on the console that is getting printed, but they also have a public IP address to which I connected. Right. So if you want to just quickly check whether they both are in connection, they both can ping each other. You can do a simple ping to check if they are connected. Right. So I'll ping the client machine from here. I'll ping on their public IP addresses. Right. So let me ping the client 18.188.55.38. Of course, the ping will not respond because in the security group, I have not enabled ICMP packets. I have only enabled SSH and HTTP. So only those traffic are allowed. Ping traffic is not allowed. And ping will not work over there. Only until and unless I go to the security settings of both the machine. So I go to the security groups. Again, I'll need to find out which security group they both belong to. So go to EC2 security. So launch wizard 4. Right. So here I will edit inbound rules and add one more rule for ICMP. Similar outbound में all traffic is allowed. Right now, if I go back and see, you can see the reply is coming. So that is the security part of AWS, which usually blocks all the inbound traffic. You have to explicitly specify which traffic you want to allow to your AWS instance. So the moment I enabled ICMP, I'm getting to see that ICMP is working over here. Right. So basically, for me, the both instances are connected and they both can ping each other because that's what you want, right? From the server, you want to SSH into client, which means you want networking to be enabled between them both. Now the actual thing starts. That is, you have to now start installing Ansible. We have to start installing Ansible on our server machine, right? So this is our server machine where we will start installing Ansible packages. So I'll take the sudo access. So what do you mean by sudo access? I'm becoming the root user over here. So I am being the root user, and now I'll try to. First thing that you do is you update your OS. So I do an update -5. I hope the commands are visible. They are big enough, right? Is the commands that I'm typing visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So after updating my OS, the Ansible server OS, what I'm doing is, so what apt update means? Apt update is basically telling the OS to update itself with the latest packages that are available in the repositories. So I hope you understand how Linux operating system works. They have their own it's a community driven OS, right? So there is a repository where the community keeps on contributing and they keeps on updating the software packages. So if you have installed an OS, the OS always needs to check with the repository whether there are any new packages that have come into the repository. So apt update will update the OS cache with the new package names that are available in the repository. It won't download them and apply it on your machine. It will just update the names of the new packages that are there. So you always do an apt update, right? Then next thing that we want to do is say we want to install Ansible, so we'll have to configure a repository, a separate repository from where I want to download the Ansible from. So I will do an apt add hyphen repository and I'll specify the name of the repository from where I wish to download Ansible. So repository name is Ansible. So this is from where this is the repository that I want to add to download the Ansible file forms. So add this. Hit enter and it will update your Ubuntu OS with the list of all the Ansible packages that are available on Ansible repository. Next command that I want to do is once this is done, you have to again fire an apt update. So again fire an apt update. Next we have to install Ansible. So apt install Ansible space -y. So this is the package that I want to install. So apt install Ansible space -y matlab it will by default use yes as an option for all the questions that comes up while installation. Right. So Ansible has been installed. Just to check if Ansible is installed properly or not, you do Ansible. See it auto completed matlab Ansible is installed. So there's a command called Ansible that got created. And if you do Ansible space --version, it gives you detail about the Ansible version that is installed. and other information like where is the configuration file, etc. Right. So this is telling you that Ansible has been installed properly with 2.9.20 version of it using Python version 2.7. Right. So next thing that we want to do is we want to configure the inventories. That is, you want to tell the Ansible server what are all the host machines that I will be configuring from this server machine, right? So you have to configure the Ansible host files. So the host files are available, the configuration files are available in the etc directory. So under etc Ansible, there is a file called host. You have to open this file using nano editor, right? So the file is opened. Now here I will simply make an entry. So it has given you an option like how do you create multiple entries, right? So for example, over here, if you want to have a group of hosts, you can give that group a name and you can specify the IP address or a FQDN, fully qualified domain name for those groups, right? So all these machines with these names or these IP addresses will belong to the group web server, right? Or you can specify individual IP address name as well. If you don't want to give a name, you can also simply use the IP address. For us, what we will do is we'll create a group, although we'll add only one machine in that group, which is our client machine. So the group that I'm creating is client underscore one because there's only one client, and under which I am specifying the IP address of my client machine. So what is the IP address of my client machine? This machine. I have to again go and check. So for the dashboard, Ansible host details. So I have to use this IP address, right? So coming back to the screen, the server machine, we specify the IP address for the client that we want to configure. It is 18.188.55.38. Mind you, I can also use the private IP address because these two instances are connected through a private network as well. But just for the explanation sake, I'm using public IP address because it will show you that you can even configure host even if you are not in the same private network. Even if you are separated, if you're in a two different networks, you can still manage to configure your host from your home network. That's why I'm using the public IP address only for the client machine. So I've mentioned the public IP address over here. Now, one change that has come since the time I created this tutorial was now our new Ubuntu machines, they are working on Python version 3. So if I show you, so we are using Python 3, right? But the Ansible that we downloaded is working on Python 2.7 version. So you'll have to tell Ansible that it has to use Python interpreter, which is Python 3. So you can simply write here all where's and give it the path where Python 3 is. The user bin. So this line will tell Ansible to use Python 3 as interpreter to perform all the operations. Right. So this needs to be added in all the host file that you create. If you're installing an older version or any version of Ansible that is using Python 2.7, as we saw in the Python version commands output, it was using Python 2.7. So we have to use this because the OS is using Python 3. Right? So you have to tell Ansible to use Python 3. Right. So this two entries we created. Control X, save it. So I've saved it now. The next thing that you have to do is you have to configure SSH keys because, like I said, the server machine and the client machine, the server will push the playbook into the client machine through SSH connection. So we have to configure SSH between server and client machines, right? So on the server machine, I'll have to first generate an SSH key. So the command is SSH hyphen key generation keygen, and you have to specify which type of key you want to generate. I want to generate an RSA key. So SSH hyphen keygen minus T RSA, hit enter. It will ask you file name you want to save. Use the default option. Just hit enter for all the questions it asks, and it will create an SSH ID underscore RSA dot public key file for you. So now, since the server will SSH into the client must be aware of the server keys, right? So in that case, you'll have to copy this public key of the server into the client machine. So I hope you know how this public PKI infrastructure works. You have all the client machines should have access of the public key of the server, right? So we have to copy this public key into the client authorized host file. So just go back here and we will first open up that file. So you go to that location. There is this file created under root in the .ssh directory. The file name is idrsa.pub. So I'm going to that location. I'm going to the currently I'm in root only, so I need not type the entire location like that. So currently I'm working in slash root. So I'll go into .ssh, and here if I do an ls, I can see that id underscore rsa.public key is present. So I'll just cat as in I'll open it and see the key. What is the key? So this is the key, right? I need to copy this entire key, and I want the client to know of this key. That is in the client machine. I'll go to the client machine, and in the client machine, I will paste that key there. So on the client machine, the first setting that I'll do is I will open the etc ssh. There's a file sshd config. So there's this configuration file that I need to open, and here permit root login, because when I what I'll do is from the Ansible server, I will do an SSH into the client machine, right? So while I SSH into the client machine, usually permit root login is prohibited. So what I want to do is I want to enable permit root login. So this line over here, permit root login prohibited password, right? So I will, and first of all, I'll uncomment it, and prohibited password I will set as yes. I will change it to yes. I don't want to prohibit root login. I want to allow it. So you just change it to yes. So I want to just edit this line in the configuration file, SSH configuration file, that it will allow anyone from the outside the network to SSH into my host, this client machine, and with the root login. So this is what I've done. Control X, save this file. Okay, permission denied because I was not the root user. So here also I'll have to do sudo su first. Only as a root user you will be allowed to change system files, right? So again nano, so this the line is over here, permit root login. I'll cut it, I'll paste it twice, because later on I want to, if I want to change it back to prohibit, I should know how to do it. So all the lines that start with a hash is comment in configuration file. So I've enabled the permit root login as yes, save it. So permit root login is enabled. Now what I have to do is I have to copy that key into the client machine. So currently I'm in my client machine, and I wish to copy that key, the key that I copied from the server. So where do you copy it? There is a file called authorized underscore keys. So if you go into the SSH directory, do an ls over here, there's a file called authorized underscore keys. So this is the file where I wish to copy that key that I've copied, from the server. The server public key needs to be pasted over here. So this means that this client will allow only this public, the holder of the private key of this public key, to access this machine, right? So I'll have to paste it there. So I'll do nano authorized key. I've opened the authorized key file. I'll go to the end, hit enter, and I will paste that key over here. That entire RSA key has been pasted over here, right? Simply close it. Right. So my authorized keys has been pasted. Now the client knows that there is a server who will SSH into me, and while SSHing into me, it will be SSHing as a root user, right? And but it won't have to provide any password while it SSH into me, because the public key has already been copied over here. So he will be using the private key pair to generate connection, and using the public key that I have, I will be able to understand that yes, it's an authorized server that is connecting to me. So no passwords required there. So now once this is done, I'll go to my server machine again. Here, not just to check if everything has gone fine or not, what I'll do is I will check whether all the Ansible clients. Now what has happened so far is I have configured Ansible server and client. I've configured Ansible server's inventory, telling it that there is one client machine with the IP address 18 something XYZ that is available. Right now, once the keys are also copied to the client, I will simply check if my client are responding using via the Ansible command. So if I do an Ansible space -m and write ping all, so this means that I'm trying to ping all my Ansible clients, right, that are available in my inventory. So for now, there is only one client that is available in the inventory. It will try to ping it using the Ansible. So see, it's saying, so the first time when I try to run an Ansible command on my client machine, of course, it will ask whether you want to continue. That is, it is trying to exchange the key. The PKI thing is happening over here, and it is trying to exchange that fingerprint, that the key, using the public private key, but I'm trying to interact with the client machine. Do you want to proceed with that? So if I say yes, it will exchange those keys. And now once the client has authenticated that yes, this server can talk to me, the next thing that happened is it ran an ping command on the client machine from the server and received a success. That is, yes, this IP address 188.188.55.38 is part of the Ansible server inventory, and this machine has responded. So now if I have 10 or hundreds of machines, I just have to copy the server key in all those machines. That's it. And now from the server, I can simply ping all those machines and see which machines are running live, which machines are not running. So from one terminal, the administrator can simply check the state of all the machines, whether they are live or not. Right? So this is one advantage. And the command that I fired, this is called as an ad hoc command. So these are Ansible ad hoc commands. -m over here stands for module that I wish to run in the command. So here I'm running a ping module, right? So ping module will basically help you do what? It will send you an ICMP packet to the client that has been mentioned in the inventory, right? So let's try a few more ad hoc commands over here. Let's say I want to install a package on this machine. I want to install a package on this machine. So first let's uninstall a package. So in the client machine, what I'll do is I'll do apt remove. This is just for demonstration. So I'm removing nano from this machine. So nano is a file editor, right? I've uninstalled nano on the client machine. So it is taking some time. In the meanwhile, what we will do is we'll write an ad hoc command over here in order to install nano on the client machine from the Ansible server. So the ad hoc command that we have to write is we have to tell Ansible to run a command on which client underscore one. Where did you last see this name, client underscore one? Anyone? Why am I writing client underscore one over here? Because this is the name that I have given to my client machine in the inventory file. So in the etc Ansible host file, I had written in the brackets client one, under which I've given the IP address of my client. So I'm telling Ansible that it has to configure this ad hoc command on client one and the module that it has to use is, since I want to install a package on it, I'm using apt module. So minus m apt, and then minus a in double quotes the name of the packet that I want to install. So name equals to nano, and then the state. What do you want the state of this packet to be? Present. And close the double quotes. So before I run this command, let me first quickly check if it is uninstalled nano. Yes, nano has been uninstalled. Now if I try to run nano file, the client is saying that no such file or directory, nano does not exist, right? So nano is not working for me over here now. But now from the server machine, let's say I'm running this Ansible ad hoc command and I wish to install nano on the client. So rather than writing apt install over here, what I'm doing is I'm sending a command from the server that it has to install nano on the client machine. For now, we have only one client, so only one machine will have nano, will get nano installed on it. But imagine having farms of servers where you had specified hundreds of IP address under client one under this name. So it would have installed one package from one command. It could have installed all the packages in all those server machines, right? So if I hit enter over here, right? So the output is changed. So that means it has been changed. This has been done. Now if I go to client here and see if the nano command works now. So see, it's working. Nano has been installed. Right. So I did not install nano in the client's terminal. I simply ran this Ansible client command over here, ad hoc command that made apt module active and asked the apt module to ensure that the package nano is present on the system. Which system? The client system. And it first checked whether it was installed. The result was state was no, it was absent. So then later on it fired the command to install it on the system. So this is using ad hoc command. I can run multiple commands or run multiple modules to perform actions on the client machine. Right. Let's also see one more module, which is the copy module. So let's say I want to copy a file from my server machine to the client machine. Right. So let's copy a file from the server machine to the client machine. So the command is, you have to use the module called copy module. Other syntaxes remain the same. So Ansible space, the module is minus m copy module, and in the double quotes you have to specify the parameters for the copy module, which is src. Src basically means the source file that you want to copy. So let's say I want to copy the etc, the host file, etc host file, Ansible host file in the client machine. So I want to copy this file where in the client machine. So you have to specify the destination. Let's say destination mate is under the temporary directory. I want to give it a name, host. Right. Close it, and you can specify the name of the client where you want to fire it. So client one. So this time I'm using the minus m module, which is the copy module. The parameters are source and destination. So it will copy the file from the source, that is the server machine at this location, and paste it on the client machine at this location. Right. If I go to my client machine currently in the tmp directory, if I go to the tmp directory, if I do an ls, there is nothing. There is only these random systemd files available, but that host file is not there over here. Right. Now if I run this command, syntax error. Okay. Mm, src and okay, dest. It is dest, not des. Spelling mistake over here. The destination is dest, right? So hit enter. Unrecognized argument. Something wrong with the way I've written it. etc Ansible host. Oh yeah. Argument के लिए -a. So use copy module with the following arguments -a. Yeah, now it's executing. So output is changed. That is, it has copied this file from the source machine to this destination on the client machine. So if I go to the client machine, now if I do an ls over here, you see the host file is available. Right, so I managed to copy a file from my server machine, push a file from my server machine to my host machines. So if you want to push a file or configuration file that you have created and you want to push it to any location on the client machines, you can simply do it using one ad hoc command. So you don't have to log in into every client and copy files there. You can simply do it from one command line interface, one command on the CLI, right? So this was all about Ansible ad hoc commands that will help you do one task at a time, right? But usually that is what not that's what you don't want to do. You want to automate everything. You want to write scripts. You want to ensure that everything runs with one command, right? You don't want to write multiple commands to configure a task, right? So in that way, in that case, what you have to use is you have to use playbooks, Ansible playbooks. So in the next part, what we are doing is we are trying to deploy a lamp stack which will run a functional website including database, everything on the client machine. So currently my client machine is not hosting any website or any database. There is no MySQL. There is no MySQL installed. There is no Apache installed on it, right? Even if I try to open this website, so this is my DNS address, right? So if I open it on the browser, there's nothing that will is loading over here because there's nothing hosted on it as such. So currently I won't see any web page over here. But the moment I deploy the LAMP stack and a functional website on the client machine, and I come back over here, I will be able to see I should be able to see that website launched on this tab over here, right? So we'll quickly run the playbook. So what I've done is I've copied all the playbooks in my Git repository. I'll just download them from there. So moving back to the root directory, here I'll create a placeholder for Git. So mkdir, creating a folder, initializing Git in it, and now I'll pull the files from my Git repository. So Git pull right. So it has pulled few files, the local repository ls. So these are all files under which we have our website files, and it will also have our MySQL SQL file and different YAML files. YAML files are basically our playbooks. Right, so I'll show you each of them one by one. So first thing that I want to do is I want to run the LAMP stack YAML file. So this YAML file I want to run so that the Apache and MySQL and everything gets installed. Right, so if I show you the LAMP stack YAML file, this is the content of the LAMP stack YAML file. So what I've written is host. The host is client underscore one. Task that I have to perform is I've given the names. So first task is to install LAMP stack. This may I want become user has to be set to yes and root so that I can install these software packages on the client as the root user. Next, I'm using the apt module. The package that I want to install is Apache, MySQL. Since there are multiple packages, I'm using under the YAML syntax, I'm using this multiple lines and specifying the packages as hyphen over here. So APT pack indentation is very important. So this, if you even miss a single space here and there, this will not work. So indentation is very important in YAML file. So Apache 2 MySQL Server PHP lib Apache 2 mod for PHP MyAdmin, PHP MySQL. Right. So these are different uh, files or software packages that I want to be installed on my client machine. So you as a network system administrator, you should know that which all packages, what are the name of the packages that you wish to install, right? State present means this has to be installed. Update cache means with the latest ones, right? Then the next is after the installation. So I'm also orchestrating over here. Orchestrating is I'm specifying step by step what needs to be done. So after the first task is complete, that of installing, the next task should be what? It should be starting the Apache service. So again, I'm using the service module over here, and as a root user, I want to ensure that Apache 2 is started and enabled. Enabled means that even if the system reboots, at every reboot, the Apache 2 service will be enabled by default. Next, after Apache, I want to ensure that MySQL service is started. So I'm ensuring that the service module is called, and MySQL package is started. And again, even after reboot, enable DS means that even the system goes into reboot. After the reboot, it will ensure that MySQL is up and running. Next, what I'm doing is after I configure Apache and MySQL and start them, I want to copy the HTML. I want to create a, directory using the file module. So I'm creating a where www HTML directory inside my Apache 2 location in the client machine, and ensuring that it's a directory with the following permission. Right. So this task is creating a directory where www HTML, and under which uh, these are the permissions assigned on the directory. Next is I am trying to use another task where I am copying using the copy module. I'm copying the index.html file into this location, into this directory that I had created in the previous task. So under the HTML location, I am pushing the index.html that I have in my current uh, directory. So this index.html will be pushed into this location in the where www HTML location on my client machine, so that the index file is hosted inside the Apache 2 configuration, right? So the moment I run this, what will happen? My client machine, which does not has, oh, I by mistakenly downloaded it on the client machine. I should have done it on the server. Okay, no issues. I will just delete it. Forgot to switch tab. So RM, I've deleted it from here. I'll go back to the server. Just copy this command. So on the server machine, I had to create it, right? So mkdir, create a directory, initialize git, and download. It did not move into that directory. Anyways, doesn't matter. So this is the LAMP stack, the YAML playbook. Right. So I explained you this playbook, right? After I run this playbook, what will happen is on my client machine, which is currently not having any Apache or MySQL service, those two services will be configured. Also, currently there is no directory called cd where, see, under cd where there is no www directory or HTML directory that will get created. Again, there is no index.html file that will get copied. And the moment I go back to my screen over here and hit refresh, it will show me that index.html file on this browser tab over here, right? So how do you run an Ansible playbook? So to run an Ansible playbook, the command is playbook Ansible hyphen playbook, and you specify the name of the playbook that you want to run. So it is lampstack underscore one.yaml for me. Right. So the moment I run this playbook, it is first thing that it is doing is it is connecting to client one. It is trying to gathering. It is trying to gather facts from the client. That is, it is checking if the client already has Apache to MySQL, that directory or the file, etc. So it's gathering those facts, right? And then later on, once it gathers the fact, the engine will determine whether, if Apache 2 is already there, then I have to skip task 1, I have to go ahead with task 2, task 3, task 4, like this. So first step, always what an app Ansible engine does, it gathers facts about the client machines, right? And gathering fact is basically understanding the state information of those machines, like what packages are already installed, are they running or are they shut down or what, right? Right. So all my task has executed. Task one, startup install lamp stack got executed. So change basically means, changed over here means that it was not installed previously. It has changed the state. So changed is what the output is. Next is Apache service is started. MySQL is started. Target directory is created and it has deployed the index.html in that target directory. Now if I go to my Ansible client over here, now if I show you, if I have that directory, so cd slash where, if I press W and tab, see www gets completed. If I press H and tab, HTML and ls, you can see index.html is present over here. Previously, we were not able to see www here, right? But after the lamp stack got fired, the playbook got fired, we were able to see the www directory and the HTML directory inside it. Now, if I take you to the browser over here, since Apache is running and that index.html file is there, if I refresh it, I should be able to see the index.html over here. Should not take this time. Let me again access it from here. The site can't be reached is probably because again the security group. Let me just check security group. It is enabled. Is it connecting to HTTPS? No. Apache 2 is running. Why is the page not getting displayed? Yeah, it's showing up here. I don't know why it's not showing up. Weird. Yeah, see, it's working. I don't know, probably on that browser tab it's not working. But anyways, the index.html file is getting displayed on this public domain. And again, if I just copy the IP address and paste it over here, again on the public IP as well as on this public DNS, it's showing up the Apache website, right? But currently there is no. This is a plain index.html that you are watching. We're not. It's not a full-fledged or full stack application. So next step में हमको क्या करना है? We want to install that the remainder of the application. That is, you want to configure database, right? So going back to the server. So using this LAMP stack playbook, what I did is I just configured the LAMP stack, and I just for the demonstration purpose I copied an index.html file just to show that LAMP stack has been configured and Apache is running. And the next one that I want to do is I want to now set up my MySQL module, right? So if I show you the MySQL, so MySQL module is this is my MySQL playbook, right? What this playbook is doing is again there are certain tasks. The first task is to start MySQL service. Second is to install Python packages for MySQL service. Third is again over here what I'm doing is in this task I'm creating a database inside my MySQL on the client machine. The database name is demo. Then I'm creating a database user for that particular database that I created, so whose name is Mahi and the password is this, right? And then I'm copying the users.sql file, that is sample SQL file, into the destination that is on my client machine. And then this user.sql file has commands to create table and insert data into that table, etc. So and then last one, what I'm trying to do is I'm using the shell module, and I'm simply asking the MySQL. Using the shell module, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to run this dump.sql, which has all the instructions to create table and insert content into the table using the MySQL terminal, right? So I'm providing this option like MySQL minus u username, the password, and select the database demo. And on this database, I want to run all the commands mentioned in the dump.sql file. What is the content of dump.sql file? Whatever is in the users.sql file. So let me quickly show you the users.sql file. So in the users.sql file, I have this. I have a create statement to create a table called users, and once it creates, so what it does is it creates following column: ID, username, and password, right? And the created at. So this and the primary key is ID. So this is what the following users.sql file does. When you run this, it will create a table called users with 4 columns in it, and it will be blank. So I hope you got what MySQL playbook is doing. Again, open the MySQL playbook. Right. So after I run this playbook, what will happen on my client machine? Currently, the MySQL service is running, but there is no user that I have created for MySQL. Also, there is no database. That there is a default database that is available. I want to create my own. Plus, I want to create a table inside it and have certain structure to that table. So rather than going on the client machine and doing it, what I'm doing is from the server, I'm running this MySQL playbook. So how do you run this playbook is Ansible playbook and the name of the playbook. So it is MySQL. Now again, one thing to see over here is this was an older playbook that I had written previously. So it was using python.pip. currently we are running Python 3 version. So I'll have to change this. So I'll open MySQL, and here instead of here I'm trying to install Python pip packages, right? So should be for Python 3, right? Because there is no Python-pip package in the current repository. So just this change has to be done. And now I will run it. Right. So first task is to gather all the facts. Second task is to start the MySQL service. It has started it. Third is to install Python package. So this one will take some time to install Python package and other stuff. Create a database, then create a database user, and then copy the imported SQL file into the client machine and run that on the shell using this command, using the MySQL shell. Right. So Python package has been changed. Failed one. What failed here is create new database. What it says, the PyMySQL Python. Okay. I think while installing MySQL installed, it says the PyMySQL Python 2.7. So as a system administrator, this thing that is something that you have to always keep in mind. The package names, the package versions, they keep on changing for Linux operating system. So you always have to be latest with the name of package. You have to know what are the latest packages there and use them. I think it's for MySQL Python package. It is saying some issue. I think it is again Python 3. Let's rerun it. Yeah, done. So it was the issue with the version. So I changed it to 3 and now it's working, right? So okay, 8, that is all the 8 tasks executed completely. Nothing failed, right? So the fail should be 0. Otherwise, your playbook has not executed successfully. So after this, what I want to do is now the MySQL database has been configured on the client machine. On the client machine, if you go and see, the database has been configured. If I just write MySQL space -u, my space -p, I've got the MySQL prompt. If I write show bases, you can see the demo database is available, right? This got created. And again, if you see, there are tables, and then you will see the table structure as well. So probably on the client machine, I did not run MySQL statement, did nothing on the client machine. This is all getting configured from the server push. The push that I'm doing on this the client machine using the playbooks, right? It is through the playbooks that all the configuration is happening on the client machine. So now, since everything has been configured, now last thing that I have to do is I want to copy my full stack application on the client machine. So to copy my full stack application on the client machine, I have written a separate playbook. So I'll show you that. So deploy website.yaml is my playbook to deploy the full stack application. If I just show you how it looks. So this is how it looks. It's very simple. In this playbook, all I'm using is the copy module where I'm copying all the files, all my login.php, my password.php, my logout.php register. So all my PHP files I'm copying onto the host machine where I want to host my application. Right. So I'm copying it from the current location. So src is the current in the current folder there is php.login.php, reset password.php, logout.php, and all of these are getting copied where in the destination on my client machine in the HTML directory, right? So if I take you to the client machine, right, exit from here, and if I see currently where am I? I am in the HTML directory. If I show you ls, there is only index.html at present over here. What I'm doing from this playbook is I'm copying all the PHP scripts into the this location over here, right? So if I just run the script now using Ansible playbook deploy website.yaml, so now it's copying all those files there, and OK7 as in it did copy all the files. Now if I go to the client machine and I do an ls, you can see all those files are reflecting in the client, right? And since my server is up and running, I just need to go to the tab, the browser where I opened the website. Now if I refresh over here, I will be sorry, the application is login.php. So I will go to login.php, hit enter, and see my application is showing up over here. Now currently there is no username and password in the database. So I'll sign up, create a user, password to it, submit. So user created. Now if I log in, so this is the application that is taking helping you to sign up and log in using the credentials you used while signing up. And if you want to reset your password, it will take you to the reset password.php, reset hyphen password.php. Did not copy it there. Kya? Oh, spelling mistake. I've renamed it here now. Let's just check. Right, so it's working. All right, so this was about Ansible hands-on. I hope it was clear to you how it all ran. If you have any queries, you can ask, raise them right now. Yes, guys. Shivam is saying that I'm not audible. Was I not audible all this while?
You were audible, sir. No problem.
Okay. Right. So that was about hands-on on Ansible. See, I know, I understand Linux is a very alien term or alien OS for most of you, but then that's what is being used in IT industry, like I mentioned in DevOps. Right. So you have to be close to the infrastructure if you want to learn deployment. So you need to understand, what packages are, what metadata is, what commands are to install those packages, configure those packages. You can't simply create a database and table. You should not just know how to write SQL statements to create tables and run queries, but also know SQL statements to configure. You should know how to configure MySQL before actually learning how to write SQL statements. So this is about deployment. That is what is expected out of a DevOps engineer, that they should be close to infrastructure. They should know how deployment is handled, right? So this was just a glimpse of it using Ansible. That is how you can manage configuration from a server machine across all the client machine. In our case, I just showed you one-to-one configuration. That is from a one server I configured one client. But usually in industry, there are multiple host machines that you have to configure at the same time. So see the kind of time it saves for you, or the flexibility that Ansible brings to the table, where you can automate, you can do write a script, or you can write a YAML script, for the entire orchestration. That is what steps, what things you want to perform one by one, and just run that script on using one command line task, and execute the same on all the machines. You can have all the machines configured, you know, I, likewise. Otherwise, usually what happens is if you configure one machine and you go into another machine, you might miss some configuration on another machine, and that missing out configuration on another machine can later on turn up as a big blunder. But if you use automation to configure all the machines, the chances of errors or missing up a single configuration on one of those machines becomes very, usually is taken out of picture. So that is the advantage of Ansible configuration management. Right. So if we talk about its usage, Ansible helps you automate everything. That is, you from an admin from a single console can run playbooks to configure appliances. You can also configure routers, switches, firewalls, databases, application, web server applications, or DNS or DHCP application. You can configure it on your personal infrastructure, that is your private hosted infrastructure, or you can also do the same on public or private clouds as well. So there is no limitation from using which you can configure those instances. You can either have it on your local machines, or you can also configure the same on the cloud services as well using the cloud modules or cloud plugins. Next is orchestration. Like I said, you can specify what needs to be done after every step has been done. Like for example, I showed you a clear example of orchestration of configuring a full stack website on a host using Ansible. So how did I orchestrate it? I first, what I did was I ran the lamp stack wala playbook, which configured lamp stack. Next, what I did was I ran the MySQL wala playbook, which will, after installation of MySQL, it will configure the database users and tables in it. And then finally what I did is I ran a Ansible playbook, which will copy all the dependent files, all my website related files onto the server. So that orchestration is very important. You cannot first copy files to the server, copy the create a MySQL. MySQL tables will not be created until and unless you install MySQL. So the steps in which I did it was called orchestration. So Ansible helps you orchestrate your entire IT infrastructure, right? Next is provisioning. So again, Ansible has an option where you can provision, or you can launch virtual machines on cloud platforms, and you can host the same deployment that I did can be done on cloud platform as well. For now, you must be wondering, sir, cloud pe to kiya, but usually in that case, it is not that Ansible created a deployment on cloud as such. That would have happened if I was not running that instance on the cloud machine, meaning that my Ansible server was on my local host, and then from the local host I would have spin EC2 instances, and then within the EC2 instances I would have installed the full stack application and configured my website. But यहाँ पर for the demonstration sake I created two machines on EC2 and then I demonstrated it to you. But under provisioning, it means what? The EC2 will also be auto generated by the Ansible, and it will provision an EC2 instance for you and then deploy the LAMP stack on it and deploy the website pages, right? So that is under provisioning. And finally, you have configuration management, where we configured application software stack on the given host machine. So we configured Apache, we configured MySQL, right? So you can manage configuration of various software stacks as well using Ansible. And we also did application deployment, that is using Ansible. You can have Ansible connected with Git, you can have Ansible connected with Jenkins, so that you within the Jenkins itself you can, after you have tested your code, you can ask Ansible to configure an infrastructure for you and deploy the tested code on that infrastructure. So Ansible has this feature where you can connect, integrate with Jenkins and Git, and using the Git and Jenkins command line, you can simply write scripts for Ansible to perform configuration management. So as form of a pipeline, you can also integrate Ansible with Jenkins. So Jenkins pipelines may, after you code, you test, you build, you can create a pipeline for Ansible where Ansible will configure the server and deploy the built code onto that server. Next is security and compliance. Again, Ansible playbooks can be written to ensure security of your infrastructure. So you can write Ansible playbook that which service should be accessible to what class of IP address, or which users within that within that infrastructure are allowed to access what packages or what services or what files. So you can define security with playbooks as well. Right. So we have not covered that because that is an advanced part of Ansible. But again, still remember that with Ansible, you can also configure security of your IT infrastructure, not just configure applications on it, but also ensure security of those IT infrastructure. The advantage, again, it's free. Ansible is an open source tool, so it comes free of cost. Very simple. Ansible playbook that we saw, you don't need any programming knowledge for that. It is a simple YAML file. You can just understand the keywords and just start writing your own YAML file. Ansible is very powerful because you can manage your complex IT workflows using Ansible. Flexible, that is, you can orchestrate how you want the application to get deployed. Agentless, that is, on the client machines, you don't have to install a third party software or anything as such. It works on the simple concept of SSH. And efficient because you don't need to install any extra software, and there is more room for application resources on your server. So again, even for the server machine or the admin dashboard, we only installed an Ansible software, that's it. And on the client machine, I didn't even install Ansible because it's simply using SSH. So it makes room for application storage rather than consuming space on the server machines. So that was about Ansible. I hope Ansible is clear to you all. I've already shared the resources with you on the classroom. If you want to practice, you can practice it. Few changes that needs to be made in the resources, like I said, pip in the module, uh, in the lamstack file. If you download it from the git that I've given you over here, this file has been shared with you. So when you download the files from the git repository, you have to ensure that in one of the files you have to change it to Python 3. The file is this one. I think in the MySQL module. So in the MySQL module, here you have to change it to Python 3 for both pip package as well as this. I have the time I created this, there was only Python 2. So the package name was Python-pip. Now we have Python 3 installed on the default OS. So you have to change it to Python 3. That's the only change you have to do if you want to practice it.